The wind howled like a wounded animal across the Colorado borderlands that bitter winter of 1879. Snow came down in blinding sheets, swallowing the world in a hush so deep even the pine trees seemed to crouch beneath it. The storm was a kind that stripped the land of sound, that turned every shape into a blur of white and every breath into ice. Silas Boone rode through it, his coat drawn tight, his face hardened by 40 years of war, whiskey, and wind. A man of few words, built for the lonely work of ranching. He knew better than most how to listen to the land. And that night, beneath the roar of the storm, he heard it, a sound no man could ignore. Small, fragile, human. He pulled the horse to a stop, his ears straining against the gale. There was again a cry, thin as thread but strong enough to pierce the storm's fury. Without hesitation, Silas turned his horse toward it, guiding the animal between snow-laden trees, the branches clawing at him as he passed. The sound drew him on, leading him to a fallen log half buried in the drifts. Behind it, curled small as a field rabbit beneath two pitifully thin blankets, lay a little girl. Her skin was as pale as the snow, her lips edged in blue, and she trembled so violently she seemed about to shatter. Silas dropped from the saddle, his boots sinking into the deep snow. He crouched beside her, his voice rough from disuse but gentle as he could make it. "Where's your mama, little one?" Her eyes, wide and glassy with fear, locked onto his. Her teeth chattered so hard he could barely understand her whisper. Please don't hurt her. She didn't mean to run. Silas swallowed hard. The storm's cold forgotten. No one's gonna hurt anyone, he promised, shrugging out his heavy wool cloak and wrapping it around her shaking form. The child was so light, it was like lifting a bundle of sticks. The moment the warmth touched her, she whimpered and clutched his shirt with surprising strength. "What's your name?" he asked, lifting her into the saddle and mounting behind her, tucking the cloak snug around her. "Emma," she murmured, her face buried against his chest. "My name's Emma." "All right, Emma," he said, his voice low as the storm around them. "Let's get you someplace warm." The ride to his cabin felt endless, the wind fighting them every step. By the time they reached the door, the fire inside had long gone out, and the cold had crept into every corner. Silas laid Emma on the cot, stripped off her soaked boots, and lit the lantern with fingers that shook despite himself. The girl didn't cry. She just stared at the flame like she'd forgotten what light was. Silas brewed pine bark tea with honey, pressing the cup into her small hands. "You got a mama, Emma?" She nodded, voice small. "Mama Amelia." "Where is she now?" Emma's gaze dropped. "She told me to hide. Said she'd find me." The storm still raged, but Silas didn't hesitate. He threw on his coat again and followed the trail of small, stumbling boot prints into the night. The snow tried to bury the tracks, but he pressed on, heart thudding harder than it had in years. He found her at last, near a rock outcrop, half covered by snow, her body curled against a pine tree like she tried to become part of it. Her dress was torn, her skin flushed with cold, lips cracked and blue. One arm hung limp at her side. Her eyes fluttered open as he knelt beside her. "Don't," she gasped, too weak for more. "I'm not here to hurt you," Silas said, his voice steady. "Emma's safe, warm by the fire." Her body shuddered, a sob breaking loose. Not loud, not wild, just soft and broken, like her strength was spent. Silas didn't waste words. He lifted her the way he'd lifted Emma and carried her through the storm, the wind whispering through the trees like it bore witness to a vow. Dawn came slow and pale, washing the frost-crusted windows in cold light. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled, casting flickers of gold on rough walls. Amelia lay beneath heavy blankets, her face bruised, lips split, but her fever had broken. Emma slept curled at her side, her small hand tangled in her mother's torn dress. Silas moved about the cabin, brewing mint tea, his hand sure but his gaze always drifting back to the woman on his cot. Amelia rose. He'd heard the name from whiskey-soaked mouths at trading posts, men who spat it like poison. Said she'd shot her husband at supper and fled with the kid. Said she was a killer. But the woman he'd carried through the storm didn't look like a killer. She held Emma like she was forged for it. Every bruise, every crack in her skin, spoke of survival, not cruelty. When she woke, gasping, clutching the blanket, Silas met her frightened gaze with calm. You needed tending. Emma needed warmth, he said, pouring her tea. Her voice was raw. You should have left me. I don't leave folks to die, even ones with stories that don't sit right. Her jaw clenched. What have you heard? Enough. They never asked why, she whispered. They never asked what he did. He used to beat me, drink and turn mean. The night it happened, I thought he'd kill me. Emma was screaming. I grabbed the gun. I didn't mean to. I just wanted him to stop. She sipped the tea, her hand shaking. His brother's a sheriff. They weren't going to wait for a trial. They'd hang me by dawn. I ran. I had to. Silas said nothing for a long time. The fire filled the silence. At last he spoke, voice low. You picked a hard road. It was either that or let Emma see them drag me away in chains. The storm outside be at the cabin, but inside the storm between them slowly eased. When Amelia's strength faltered again, she lay down, her promise soft as snow. I'll go as soon as I can walk. I know what it costs to help a fugitive. Silas only watched the fire. That morning, the scent of frying bacon woke Emma. She blinked at the unfamiliar room, then relaxed when she saw her mother. Silas stood at the stove, stirring the pot, humming low. Emma tiptoed to him, tugged at his coat. He looked down into wide, solemn eyes. Please marry my mama, mister, she whispered. She's all I have now. Silas froze, the spoon still in his hand. Slowly he knelt, meeting her gaze. And in that moment, something shifted deep inside him, something he kept locked away. He didn't speak. He only laid a gentle hand on her head and kept stirring. The cabin quiet, but for the fire's crackle and the storm's fading howl. That evening, as the sun bled behind the pines, Silas patched the cabin's gaps, sealed out the cold. Amelia watched him, guilt and gratitude tangled in her heart. Why do you do all this? She asked quietly. Silas didn't turn. Ain't right for a child to sleep cold. Did you ever have children? No wife. Never came close. Then why help us? He set the hammer down, finally meeting her eyes. You remind me of someone. My sister. Folks said she deserved what she got. Husband beat her till she died with their second child inside her. Nobody said sorry. I swore if I ever saw it again, I'd do more than watch. The room fell silent. The storm outside spent at last. And for the first time in years, Silas Boone let himself hope for spring. The storm had long since passed, but the silence in the cabin lingered, thick with things left unsaid. It filled every corner, settling between Silas and Amelia like another wall. At last, Amelia broke it, her voice brittle as old paper, worn thin by the weight of all she'd endured. I won't be a debt to any man, she said, looking at him with wary eyes, especially not a kind one. Silas met her gaze, steady as ever, and gave a single nod, as if he expected nothing less. I ain't offering a debt, he said quietly. Just a dry roof for a few nights. Nothing more. She studied him then. This man of few words who built fences and repaired windows without asking, whose silences said more than most men's speeches. She had braced herself for pity, or worse, for calculation, for the cost she would one day have to pay. But Silas had offered neither. Instead, his kindness came wrapped in small, thoughtful acts that asked for nothing in return. An extra blanket laid near the fire, a pillow placed beside it, his rough hand pausing gently on Emma's shoulder as he tucked the blanket higher to keep her warm through the night. That quiet care slipped past the armor Amelia had built around herself, the armor she'd worn since the night she ran. It felt more dangerous than any threat, because it didn't demand, didn't press. It made her want to trust, and that, she thought, was the most dangerous thing of all. Later, when the fire burned low and shadows danced across the cabin walls, Silas settled on the floor across from them, his back against the logs, arms crossed like he was guarding some invisible line. The storm had finally loosened its grip on the night. The wind outside quieted to a mournful sigh through the trees. Amelia lay in the dark, listening to the hush, to Emma's slow breathing beside her, and at last she whispered, "What do you want from us?" His answer came after a long, long pause. Nothing you haven't already given. Her brow furrowed. And what's that? Silas's gaze didn't leave the fire. His voice was low, roughened by the years. A reason. Her breath caught at that, and for the first time in months, she let herself lean back, let herself rest against the cot, Emma's warmth beside her. Outside, the storm was over. Inside, for just a heartbeat, the running stopped. The fire dwindled to coals, and still neither spoke. The cabin felt wrapped in a peace so complete. It seemed the world had forgotten to turn. Amelia sat at the table, turning a cold tin cup in her hands, her fingers tracing the rim. She wasn't shivering anymore, but the tension in her shoulders refused to ease. Across the room, Silas leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, his eyes steady on the embers. At last, the words rose up, unbidden but unstoppable. "I should tell you," she began, her voice dry as the prairie dust. He didn't move, didn't press, just waited. "I was married 5 years. Harold Shaw. His family owned the feed store in Esville. I thought marrying into that kind of name meant safety, respect." Her thumb traced the seam of the tin cup as if the story might split apart. "First time he hit me, he brought flowers the next day, said it was a liquor talking, that it wouldn't happen again." Silas didn't move, but his jaw clenched, the only sign of the storm brewing beneath his quiet. The bruises came next, then the broken ribs. "I told folks I fell. Told myself I just wasn't a good enough wife." Her voice hardened with the memory. After Emma was born, it got worse. He'd slam doors, scream. She cried every time he came near. "I tried to leave. I went to the sheriff." Her mouth twisted. "He said I should be more agreeable. Harold was respected. I shouldn't cause trouble." The words fell like stones into the stillness. Then came the hardest part. The night it happened, he raised his hand with Emma watching. I stepped between them. He shoved me. I hit my head. When I came to, he was still coming at me. I grabbed the fire poker. She stared into the fire, as if she could see it all again. I didn't mean to kill him. I just wanted him to stop. There was no defense in her words. No pride. Just the truth, stripped bare. His family owned the town. They weren't going to let me speak. So I ran. She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand. I've been running ever since. She hadn't expected an answer, but when she lifted her gaze, Silas had crossed the room. He set down the axe he'd been using to split kindling, poured rye into 2 glasses, and set one before her. She hesitated, then lifted it. The burn of the whiskey was sharp, but it steadied her, warmed her from the inside out. "Why?" she asked, the word no louder than a breath. "Why help me?" Silas stared at the fire, the lines of his face carved deep by years of weather and loss. "Because I know what it means when no one does." In the glow of the embers, she saw it then, the scar on his temple, pale against the skin. His voice softened, but there was steel beneath it. "My sister begged for help once. Neighbors turned away. Sheriff said it was domestic. When she died, they blamed her temper." His voice didn't waver. "I was up north, working. By the time I came home, they'd buried her. The man who did it walked free." The cabin was so quiet she could hear the crackle of each log as it burned. "I swore on her grave," he went on, voice steady as a vow, "that if I ever saw someone else in that place, I wouldn't stay quiet." He looked at her then, not with pity, not with judgment, but with a kind of recognition that made her chest ache. "I don't care what the law says. Sometimes the law is just a fence to keep men like him safe. But I know what's right." The words settled over them like a blanket. Amelia felt the tightness in her chest loosen, just a little. In that small cabin, with the wind no longer clawing at the walls and Emma safe in sleep, she let herself breathe, not out of fear, but something close to hope. Morning had barely broken, the frost silvering the ground, when Silas heard them, hooves pounding hard and fast over the frozen earth. He stepped outside, boots crunching over the snow, breath clouding the air. The sun was struggling to rise, casting pale light over the pines, but it wasn't the cold that made his spine go rigid. It was a sound, tight, purposeful. Men who'd ridden with intent. 3 of them, not neighbors. not drifters. Bounty men. Inside the cabin. Amelia stirred. Emma still asleep, her small hand clutching the quilt. Silas didn't look back. His hand hovered near his hip, not on his pistol. Not yet, but ready. The riders came into view, their horses steaming in the chill. One wore a hat too clean for a rancher. Another chewed tobacco with the lazy confidence of a man who'd kill for less. The third held his reins with precision, a folded paper in his hand. The leader stopped 10 feet from the porch. His voice was slick with false politeness. "Mornin'. Sorry to bother you at this hour. We're looking for someone." Silas didn't move. "You found me." The man's smile was thin. "Ain't after you, friend. Name's Harold Clay. We've got reason to believe a woman named Amelia Shaw's been seen out this way. You wouldn't have seen her, would you?" Silas's jaw worked once, slow. "She ain't running anymore." The riders exchanged glances. Clay tilted his head. "That's so. She's under protection now." "Yours." Silas reached into his coat, pulled out a folded paper. The ink was still smudged from the night before. He held it up. "Marriage license," he said. "Signed yesterday. Name reads Amelia Boone now. She's my wife." The man with the tobacco spit into the snow. "That supposed means something?" "It means your bounty's void. You want her, you'll need a fresh warrant, and you'll have to go through me." Clay's face hardened. "You willin' to die for her, Boone?" Silas's voice was quiet as the frost. "I've seen better men than me buried by worse women than her. But this one, she fought to live. You want her? Come through me." The air was sharp as a drawn blade. The bounty men shifted in their saddles. Hands inched toward holsters. But Silas didn't draw. He just stood, solid as a lamb beneath him. Then the cabin door creaked. Amelia's face appeared, pale and wide-eyed. Emma stirred behind her. "She's my wife," Silas said again, slower this time. Clay spat again. "Ain't this a damn storybook?" He crumpled the paper and shoved it into his coat. "This ain't over." "Time's enough," Silas said. The men turned and rode out, leaving churned-up snow in their wake. Only then did Silas breathe. He turned to Amelia, standing barefoot in the doorway. "You lied for me," she whispered. "No," Silas said. "I told them the truth." Her gaze dropped to the license still in his hand. "That ain't real." "It could be," he said softly, "if you want it to be." Her voice broke. Why risk everything? He glanced at the trail the riders had left, then back at her and at Emma. Because some folks deserve a second chance, and some little girls shouldn't grow up afraid every time they hear a knock. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The click of the latch sounded like a promise. Morning light barely touched the frost when Amelia found the letter on the table, weighted down with a tin cup. The ink was fresh, the handwriting firm. She read it, breath catching at every line. Silas's account, sent to a lawyer in Esville. He'd written it all. The bruises, the scars, the truth she'd spoken by the fire. He'd signed his name at the bottom. She stormed outside, heart racing. Silas was splitting wood, steam rising from his shoulders. The axe fell with quiet strength. "You send it," she said. He didn't look up. "I did. To a lawyer in Esville." Without asking, he paused, set the axe down, and met her gaze. "Figure it was time someone spoke for you." Amelia held up the letter, her fingers trembling ever so slightly. The paper as heavy as the truth it carried. Her voice was quiet, but the weight behind it was fierce. "This could stir everything back up. You could get dragged into a fight that isn't yours. Why would you risk your name for someone like me?" Silas wiped his hands on an old rag, then lifted his gaze, really looking at her, like he could see straight through the scars she carried and the walls she kept. His voice was steady, low, and certain. "Because you're not someone like anyone." The words hit her so hard she couldn't speak, couldn't find where her voice had gone. Before the silence could stretch too long, the cabin door creaked on its hinges. Emma appeared, small and soft in the morning light, swallowed by a blanket far too big for her, hair wild with sleep, cheeks pink from the warmth of the fire. Without hesitation, she crossed to Silas, pressed her tiny hand into his, and said, clear as a bell, he's the only man who ever made Mama smile again. The world seemed to stop in that moment. Amelia felt it, the twist in her heart, the pull of something bigger than herself. Silas looked down at the little girl, his expression softening. You cold, Button? He asked gently. Emma nodded, and Silas scooped her up, draping his worn coat over her shoulders, tucking it tight before placing her carefully into Amelia's waiting arms. That small act, the tenderness of it, broke something open inside Amelia. They stood there for a long moment, the three of them bound not by blood, but by survival, by chance, and by something dangerously close to family. Amelia swallowed hard, the words rising like a tide she could no longer hold back. Would you do it for real? She asked, voice soft and shaken. Silas's brow furrowed. Do what? Marry me. Not for show, not to fool bounty hunters. For her. Silas stood still, the wind brushing past them, lifting stray strands of Amelia's hair. The pine needles whispered, and the world seemed to wait. Then Silas stepped closer, closing the distance, his hand reaching out to touch Emma's small fingers where they clutched her mother's shoulder. His voice was quiet, but firm, not just for her, for all three of us. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes, unbidden and fast. You don't even know what you're promising. I know this, Silas said, his voice steady as stone. That little girl looks at me like I hung the moon, and you look at me like you're waiting for me to vanish. But I'm still here. He touched her arm gently, grounding her. I'm not offering rescue. I'm offering a life. Hard, honest, maybe a little quieter than what you've known, but it's yours if you want it. She couldn't speak, could only hold Emma tight as the little girl rested her head against her chest, already dozing again. Silas reached into his coat, pulled out the marriage license he'd shown the bounty hunters. Now, at the bottom, a new line had been added. In his careful hand, awaiting consent of bride, he held it out to her. Amelia looked down at it, then up at him, and for the first time in years, she smiled, a real smile, not born of fear or duty, but of something fragile and true. I'll think about it, she whispered. Silas nodded. I'll be here, he said quietly, for both your answers, however long they take. Spring came, and with it color and life. The snow melted, leaving behind new grass and the sweet scent of earth. Birds returned, filling the air with song. But not everything that returns brings warmth. They were stacking kindling behind a cabin when they heard it, the slow, deliberate beat of hooves on damp ground. Emma, drawing near the porch, froze. From the trees, a rider emerged, tall and broad, his horse lathered and wild-eyed from a hard ride. Amelia stiffened, her grip tightening on Silas's arm before her mind even caught up. I know that horse, she whispered. The man dismounted, boots grinding into the earth. His hat shadowed his face, but Amelia knew him by the anger that seemed etched into his bones. Elias, she said, voice cold as a river in thaw. Silas stepped in front of her, hand near his revolver. Friend of yours. Brother-in-law, she said flatly, brother to the one I buried. Elias took off his gloves slowly, deliberately, as if daring the world to stop him. You made a mess, Amelia, he sneered. Ran off in the night like a coward. Dragged your bastard through hell, and for what? To hide in a shack with a hired hand. Amelia moved past Silas, her fury steadying her legs. You know what your brother did to me. You saw it. I saw a wife who didn't know her place. Elias spat. And now I see you playing house with some fool who doesn't know better. Silas stepped down from the porch, calm but ready. That's enough. Elias smirked. This ain't your fight, Boone. It is now, Silas said. And then Elias swung. The punch landed hard, knocking Silas back, but he recovered fast, striking back with the force of a man who fought to protect. They grappled, fists meeting flesh, boots slipping in the mud. Elias fought dirty, clawing and using his weight. Silas fought smart, but age and rage made Elias dangerous. A blow to Silas's ribs dropped him. Blood streaked his face. Elias raised his boot, but before it could fall, a small voice cut through the storm. No! Emma ran to them, arms outstretched, throwing herself between the two men. "You leave my papa alone." Elias froze. Silas, struggling to rise, rasped, "Emma, go back." But she stood firm, trembling but fierce. "Mama cried every night because of you. Papa makes her laugh." Amelia moved, pulling Emma back to safety. Elias stared at the child, something flickering in his eyes, shame or doubt, but only for a heartbeat. "You think this makes him your father?" he growled. "No," Amelia said, voice strong, "but you can build something better than blood." Silas rose, slow but steady. "You want to take her back? Do it the lawful way. Bring proof. Bring a warrant. Bring a court." Elias spat in the mud. "The court don't care." "Then you've got no claim here," Silas said. "And if you touch her again, I'll bury you so deep the buzzards won't find you." Elias glared, then backed away, mounted his horse, and left, fury trailing behind like dust in his wake. Amelia dropped beside Silas, hands shaking as she checked his wounds. "You're bleeding." "I've been worse," he murmured, pulling Emma close as she clung to him. The sun rose over Esterville the day the clerk handed Silas the letter. The seal glinted in the light, and when he read it, his shoulders eased. Amelia was cleared. Self-defense. Freedom. She let out a soft breath, Emma's small hand clutching her shawl as they stood in the morning light. That afternoon, beneath tall pines, they wed. No fanfare, no grand crowd, just neighbors, a pine log altar dressed in wildflowers, and vows spoken plain and true. Emma carried a tiny bouquet. Silas promised his heart with no fancy words, only the kind that last. When Emma called him Papa, and he gathered them into his arms, the world felt right. Later, as twilight fell, Silas carved their name into the beam above the door. Emma Rose Boone. Each letter a promise, a root, a home. Emma ran her fingers over the carving. "You're my real papa now, right?" Silas knelt, cupping her cheeks. "Been waiting to be, little one." That night, Amelia wrote in her journal by firelight. "I ran from death," she wrote, "but I found life in a man who speaks little, but loves loud enough for three." And as they sat together, Silas on the hearth, Emma curled in his lap, Amelia resting against his shoulder, the pines whispered outside, and love, at last, held fast. Their roots had found home. If the story stirred your heart, the whisper of pine, the warmth of found family, the strength of quiet love, then you're right where you belong. Here in the untamed beauty of the frontier, love isn't easy. It's tested, torn, and true. If you believe in silent cowboys, brave women, and vows carved deeper than wood, subscribe to Wild West Love Stories. Another tale waits just over the horizon, and you won't want to miss the next flicker of firelight that rises from dust and daring. Click subscribe. The trail's calling.